The components that make up the new SBISD pay system are pay grades, pay ranges, and control points. Every job in the school district has a pay grade. Pay grades are grouped around common or like jobs in that category. For every grade, there is a pay range. And in every pay range, there is a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum. The minimum, midpoint, and maximum in the range are values that are set and help us control and provide equity within the pay range. The midpoint is our target or anchor for the pay range. You may be wondering why this information is critical to understand how we'll be calculating compensation. You may wonder why we updated our compensation plan. We found that some of our employees are not being paid at the market values. We also found that we don't have an equitable way to calculate raises. Both of these issues are being addressed by our new compensation plan. We want to maintain a pay system that values employees and their work that aligns to area market values. We must be a competitive employer in our area and an employer of choice. To recruit, retain, and grow our staff, we need to change our compensation model. Our pay system must value job responsibility while being sensitive to the market. We also need a compensation model that provides a managed method to distribute pay increases. We're going to walk through several scenarios. Keep in mind these examples are not teaching roles. We'll have an example of how this impacts a teacher's salary calculation at the end of this slide deck. Here's a graphic for a pay range. You see a minimum, midpoint, and a maximum. The stars represent salaries in the pay range. Remember, in all pay grades, we have people that fall below, at, or above pay range midpoint. You may ask, why do these points in the range matter? Well, historically, we've calculated raises using a formula that gave a percentage of the individual's total pay. So no matter where you were in the pay range, you received a total percentage of your pay. For employees that fell below midpoint, that meant less money. For those who fell above midpoint, that meant more money. This way of calculating raises isn't equitable and only pushes those at the top and those at the bottom farther apart in the pay range. We want to ensure that all employees are in a pay range with a moderate spread and that raises are fairly calculated and distributed. Many school districts already use the model we're moving to. So under the new compensation plan, we'll be calculating raises for a pay grade based on a midpoint. That means whatever pay grade an employee is in, they'll receive a raise based on a percentage of the midpoint in that pay grade's pay range. The percentage set when calculating raises for non-teaching staff in SBISD will be 3% if the employee's current salary is below or within the range. The percentage used if the employee's current salary is above the maximum of their range will be 1%. Let's look at that. Let's say an employee is making $50,000. They're in a pay grade with a minimum of $35,000 and a maximum of $75,000. That puts the midpoint for that pay grade at around $60,000. So they're slightly below the midpoint. Normally, they would receive a raise based on $50,000. However, now they'll be getting a raise based off of the midpoint, the $60,000. This means they'll be getting slightly more money than before with the old calculation. On the reverse side, if they're making $70,000 in the same range, their raise will also be based off of this same midpoint of $60,000. That means their raise will be slightly less than it would have been if we used the old calculation. Bottom line, everyone in the same pay grade will receive the same dollar increase or raise amount. This change ensures we're not pushing the spread of pay grades wider and wider apart over time, and that all of our employees receive equitable compensation. A term you'll hear is right-sizing the range. It's a great way to think about this change. It helps the district keep everyone in an equitable pay range and receive raises in a logical way. We want to make sure every employee in SBISD is within their pay grade's salary range. We don't want to have someone who isn't making the minimum salary for a pay grade. We do have some employees who are paid considerably less than others that work in similar roles at other school districts. If we have an employee who is not in their salary range, SBISD is going to make a salary adjustment for those employees. This means we're going to calculate their midpoint raise like we did in the previous example, and if that total compensation plus whatever they're currently making doesn't get them at or above the range minimum, we're going to add dollars to their total salary until they meet the minimum. What does this look like? Let's say their salary range is $45,000 to $85,000. Currently, they're making $30,000. They are starting below their pay range. Even with a 3% raise of $1,800 based on the midpoint of $60,000 for their range, their salary plus the raise still falls below the $45,000 minimum for their salary range. SBISD will add a salary adjustment to their $31,800, bringing them up to slightly above the $45,000 minimum. That means they'll receive the midpoint raise plus an additional approximately $13,200 under the new compensation plan model. This is an extreme example, but illustrates the point that we're trying to make about how it's important to us to make sure we're bringing up staff who are currently being compensated below market range. If this example had the employee meeting or falling above the minimum after the raise was applied, they would not need to receive an adjustment. So what about an employee who is above midpoint? They will receive the same midpoint salary amount of $1,800. They would not receive an adjustment because they are in range for their pay grade. If an employee is over the maximum in their range, they will receive a percentage of the midpoint range. This means that instead of a 3% raise based on midpoint, employees that fall above maximum range will receive a 1% of midpoint range. Ranges are determined based on market value. Again, these examples are all for non-teaching employees. The midpoint for the salary range for teachers is $65,005. This is based on regional salary ranges of other school districts in comparison to SBISD. The identified salary range for teachers is the minimum $52,000 and the maximum $78,010. That means the 3% raise for teachers in SBISD is $1,950. What's different in calculating the range for teachers is the additional impact years of experience has on their range. So calculating the range for teachers means multiplying 3% of the midpoint of $65,005 and looking at where they are in the step compensation for years of service. As before, if we have a teacher who is not at minimum in their range after they receive their $1,950 raise, SBISD will make a salary adjustment to bring those teachers to market value. What's really exciting is that all teachers will receive at least a $1,950 raise. For more information about the new compensation plan, visit www.springbrancisd.com/compensation. There you'll find a toolkit of resources and information on this topic. If you still have questions, contact the SBISD Human Resources website.